Welcome to this module. In this first sequence, we will see together what ADHD is, what it is not, and what are the false beliefs that surround it. My name is Nader Perrou. I'm professor at the University of Geneva and specialist of ADHD. So, what is ADHD? Attention Deficit Hyperactivity Disorder, or ADHD, is a neurodevelopmental disorder and therefore begins in childhood and persists, at least at the level of symptoms, into adulthood in most cases. The description of children with ADHD-like features were known before the 20th century, and it wasn't until 1902 that Dr. George Frederick Steele made the first accurate description of the disorder. It is therefore not a recent condition. If the disorder affects boys more than girls in childhood, the ratio is 1:1 in adulthood, and it affects both genders. Keep in mind that the disorder is very common in the general population. It affects around 4 to 6% of children and about 2 to 4% of adults. So it wouldn't be so weird if you know someone who has it. So, how do we get it? So ADHD is very heritable and there is a high genetic loading, although no specific gene has been found to date. It is therefore not uncommon to find someone who have it in the same family and to have multiple affected individuals. There are other risk factors, the most important of which are complications during pregnancy and in the perinatal period. Very low birth weight, birth trauma, exposure to toxic substances during fertile life, hypertension during pregnancy. Head trauma with loss of consciousness during childhood and growing up in an environment marked by extreme poverty and almost complete lack of interest in the child are almost all risk factors. Finally, it should be emphasized that an environment that pays little attention to the needs and sufferings of a child contributes to the persistence of the disorder in adulthood. And basically, is it serious? Or does this ADHD cause problems? Yes, of course. Being a disorder, and like all other psychiatric disorders, it negatively impacts the life of a person who suffers from it. And not only in one area of his life, but on several levels. So socials, there are interpersonal difficulties, fights, more crimes, social isolation. At the family level, there are more divorce, couple conflicts, problems with children. At school, there are more school failures, bullying, lower level of education. And finally, at the professional level, there are also conflicts at work, unemployment, lower socioeconomic level. It is therefore a real disorder that can be treated either by drugs, such as psychostimulants, and you will see this in the Module 3, or by other non-pharmacological approaches, such as psychotherapy. And yet, ADHD is highly stigmatized. There are indeed many myths and beliefs around the disorder that need to be deconstructed. These false beliefs are important to be aware of. So what are these false beliefs and myths surrounding ADHD? The false beliefs or myths surrounding ADHD are false statements about ADHD that are most often found on social networks, but you can also hear them from friends, family members, and they contribute to the stigmatization of the disorder. It is therefore a question of demystifying them. Here are a few of them, and we will start to briefly deconstruct them together. So the first one is ADHD doesn't exist. It's a big pharma invention, which is entirely false since the first description of the disorder has been made before the 20th century, so far before the creation of the big pharma. Another myth is the fact that ADHD is overdiagnosed because it's fashionable, which is again not true. So indeed, the prevalence of the disorder is really similar across the world. And it hasn't changed for decades, according to epidemiological studies. We simply detect better. Another myth is the fact that it is a problem due to the education of parents, or it is a problem due to poor diet. The disorder, remember, is above all genetic. It is indeed true that the environment can do a lot, but that is in no way the fault of the parents. Another myth, it only exists in children. The disorder persists in adulthood in most cases. Another one, treatments or drugs, they work for everyone, or stimulants make patients dependent. This is false, and the studies all agree that these drugs work and do not make you dependent. But you will see this in the next modules. It only affects boys. This is not true again. The prevalence in boys and girls is slightly different, but in adults the prevalence is the same. It's not a disorder. It's normal to have trouble concentrating. Everyone has that. It's just laziness. Or it's cheating to ask for academic or professional accommodation. I said above, regarding a disorder, the deficits are real and impact all spheres of a person's life. There are plenty other myths, but don't worry, you will slowly learn to recognize and deconstruct them. We hope that you will have understood that this disorder is real, that it has a lasting and significant impact on the lives of those who suffer from it, and that to give into the myth and beliefs that surround it would be a mistake, which in the end would only contribute to the ADHD stigma. In the next section, you will see the specific areas of ADHD, or if you prefer, the attentional and impulsive hyperactive symptoms of the disorder.